health of the interpreters, I invite participants to ensure that they speak into the microphone into which their headset is plugged in, and to avoid manipulating the earbuds by placing them on the table away from the microphone when they are not in use. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members on Zoom, please use the raised hand function. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can, and we appreciate your patience and understanding in this regard. So members on the 1064. Yeah, MP Hallen.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move a motion today on this 1064 that in light of the recent Equifax Canada report on increasing mortgage delinquencies and bankruptcies, the committee invite the Superintendent of Bankruptcies, Finance Canada officials, the Chief Economist of the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, Equifax Canada, and any other witnesses deemed relevant by the committee and the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance to appear separately for no fewer than 2 hours, that the testimony and documents tabled from these meetings be included as part of the committee's study on the impact of inflation and interest rates on mortgages in Canada.
Okay. Thank you, MP Hallen. I understand it's been distributed, Clerk, yes, to all the members. So the members should have received it electronically. Everybody, I'll just give you a moment with that. And still, MP Hallen, would you like to say anything else? I do see some hands up. Okay, go ahead.
Definitely. Thank you, Chair. Colleagues, anyone that talks to Canadians today hears the pain that Canadians are feeling. Canada feels more broken than ever before. The Canadian dream, whether you're an immigrant to this country or you've lived here your whole life, has turned into a nightmare. That Canadian dream includes things like owning a home or owning a business. But after 8 years of failed economic policies by this government and out-of-control deficit spending, it gave Canadians 40-year highs in inflation and the fastest interest rate hike seen in Canadian history, because this government put more debt on Canadians' heads than every single government before them combined. And that made interest rates go up at the fastest rates. And recently, Desjardins also said that Minister Freeland would miss her deficit targets. This means that the debt is only going to grow and the pain is only going to get worse. It was the Governor of the Bank of Canada in this committee that said that the interest rates would have to stay higher for longer. And this is the pain that we're seeing across the country. And on 2 separate occasions, the Governor of the Bank of Canada confirmed that this government's fiscal policy and his monetary policy, basically his try to tame inflation, are rowing in opposite directions. And it's because this government continues to spend money recklessly, and it's making interest rates stay higher for longer. We also know that Canada's GDP per capita is contracting. That means Canadians are getting poorer, and they're not getting ahead, even though they're working harder than ever before. Rising taxes, like the carbon tax scam, have contributed to unaffordability and rising prices. The cost of gas, groceries, and home heating have all gone up and continue to go up because of the carbon tax. And on April the 1st, this Liberal NDP government plans to hike that carbon tax 23%. We know that 70% of Canadians, they don't want this carbon tax. We also know that now 70% of premiers have asked this government not to hike the tax. One of those premiers is Liberal Premier out of Newfoundland and Labrador. Even he is calling on this Liberal government to not hike the tax. And the Governor of the Bank of Canada also said that getting rid of the carbon tax would put a huge dent in inflation. 0.6% of the top line inflation number can be taken off overnight by getting rid of this carbon tax that hasn't helped the government meet any of its emission reduction targets, but only made life more expensive for Canadians. And getting rid of that tax, bringing down inflation, could also help the Governor of the Bank of Canada lower the interest rates faster. This carbon tax has also contributed to the 2 million people going to a food bank we see in a single month in Canada. Something I don't think anyone could have imagined was a part of the Canadian dream, is seeing 2 million Canadians go into a food bank because they just cannot afford food any longer. And this government, with the support of the NDP, still wants to hike the tax on food. Second Harvest recently said they estimate, on top of the 2 million Canadians, that another million people will go into a food bank this year. The reality is that a third of those people are children that are going hungry. And because of the dramatic rise in the price of gas, groceries, and home heating because of the carbon tax, more people are at risk of a mortgage and credit card delinquencies. We know that after 8 years of this government, mortgages and rents have doubled. More and more of Canadians' paychecks are going towards shelter costs, sometimes up to 70% because of the rise in mortgage and rent. And we know that there's a housing shortage. This government is great at photo ops and announcements, but not at making sure that homes actually get built. The housing minister, Sean Fraser, also admitted that their programs don't actually lead to homes being built. And yet they keep shoveling out more money, which is adding to the debt that's keeping the interest rates higher for longer. And we also know now that Canadian business insolvencies are surging. Business owners and workers are at risk now of losing their paychecks. And that's what brings us here today, Chair. Equifax recently reported that mortgage and credit card delinquency rates are soaring, while bankruptcies are also on the rise. Mortgage delinquency rates are up more than 50% across Canada and up 135% in Ontario and 62% in BC. There's a significant jump in this number from pre-pandemic levels. The rise in mortgage and credit card delinquencies are significantly affecting younger Canadians. We know that 9 out of 10 young people in this country have given up on the dream of home ownership. It's impossible to see that, and those that are lucky enough to realize that dream today are living a nightmare because it's impossible for them to make these payments because of the high interest rates staying higher for longer. We also know that there's 70,000 plus mortgages that are being renewed every single month, at a minimum of double the rate because of that high interest rate caused by this government's high inflation spending. Equifax found that credit card balances are growing primarily from reduced payment levels, especially from younger mortgage borrowers. Canadians now owe nearly $1.80 for every dollar that they earn. And this is why Canadians now are the most indebted households in the entire G7, and the debt level on households is bigger than Canada's entire economy. Household debt servicing ratios are at all-time highs. The cost of living crisis is driving Canadians to use credit cards or borrow money just to make ends meet. As reported by the Superintendent of Bankruptcies, the number of filings has risen 23%. In Ontario, they've spiked up to 76.5% and 46.5% in BC. And now Canadians are most at risk, according to the IMF, in the G7 for a mortgage default crisis. They cannot keep up with these payments and these renewals that are being renewed at more than double the rate in most cases. Conservatives believe it is time that the government take this serious issue and bring some common sense back. Canadians could lose their homes, their ability to borrow or qualify for credit, and the economy could suffer dire consequences. If there are significant bankruptcies or Canadians are unable to pay their mortgages, this country and the economy will be at risk. That is why common sense Conservatives are calling the Minister of Finance to appear to outline why the government has let it get this bad and what their plan is on fixing this. How and when will they fix the budget? And what is the plan back to balanced budgets so inflation and interest rates come down and Canadians don't have to worry about losing their homes? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, MP Helen. I do have a speakers list here. I've got MP Sainte-Marie up next and then MP Zerowitz.
Oui, alors bonjour, merci monsieur.
Hello everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I accepted to sign onto 1064, and I will vote in favor of the motion that is tabled. The reason is that this is very preoccupying. We don't have enough time in this this committee. We have to move on to C 159. We really have to take the time to improve the bill on the fall economic statements. And in the spring, there will be another bill on a budget, which will be presented on April 16th. That will keep us busy full time. And we also have a study on various finances. Now, we have a situation that we can't predict. Everything is increasingly expensive. And as Jazz said, when reading the report, there is an increasing amount of delinquencies for credit card payments and so on. And so this was all very preoccupying. I think we should at least have one meeting per week for the next couple of weeks on this topic. We have to invite experts, as the motion suggested. We should see if this is just if the situation is indeed as alarming as the report says. Then we should speak to the government. We know that interest rates are high still, and that housing is increasingly expensive. So what is the government's strategy in response to that? We also should be able to make recommendations to them. Clearly, I don't have the same analysis as Jazz and the Conservatives with regards to the carbon tax, but the issue being the delinquency rates that are increasing and bankruptcies that are increasing, this is all very concerning and impacts the economy adversely. So to summarize, we have to do our work on C159 and continue our work on the budget analysis, but we should also continue our study on the impact of inflation on mortgage payments. The situation is evolving, and I would be favorable for us to meet during the next 2 parliamentary break weeks at least once a week to study these matters. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Saint-Marie.
Bizarrowitz, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you say my name, Mr. Chair. I too want to say salutations to everyone. So nice to see everyone, and look forward to seeing everyone in person next week. I just wanted to address a little bit the melodramatic and in many cases disinformed talking points of Mr. Hallam. Inflation is indeed very, very, very painful. It's been painful not only for Canadians, but it's been painful for those around the world. And I know all of you are quite versed in this because I've mentioned this many times, but there was actually an academic from Columbia University that talked about how the pandemic had a massive, massive impact on our global economy, and that includes Canada. And he talks about how when the pandemic first started, 95% of the world's economy suffered a simultaneous contraction. And basically all of the things that happened to the economy resulted in lost earnings. And just in the first initial months of the pandemic, there were $10 trillion US dollars lost, which is more than a tenth of the global GDP economy. I say all these things and remind ourselves about what the massive global heart attack was to our economies, and we're still trying to come out of it. Canada, as I think all of us know, continues to be fighting inflation. It continues to trend downward, which is great, but from an inflationary perspective, it is painful, but we should also acknowledge that we are doing better from an inflationary perspective than other countries. I will say to you that I don't understand what the impact, what Mr. Helm's talking about, the Canadian dream. We continue to have millions of people who want to continue to come to Canada. we continue to be ranked one of the best countries in the world. We're blessed with a strong social welfare system, which has been greatly strengthened by our Liberal team over the last 8 years, and I'm very proud of our improvements. In terms of the carbon tax, climate change is happening, and I want to remind that to some of our Conservative colleagues who might not understand that. And 99% of economists have confirmed, that's 99.5% of economists have confirmed that a price on pollution is the cheapest and most effective way to actually reduce the emissions that you don't want to have and actually spur behavior that we're looking for. In terms of food banks, I definitely will tell you I am worried about that as well. And just meeting with many of the people who offer food bank services within my riding, the number one issue is the housing issue. And I know that we have a housing study that is before us at this committee. Very important for us to be continuing with that study because we have some clear work and some clear recommendations that I think we need to move forward on. And I'd also say to you, just in terms of this topic, I have been very closely keeping in touch with my small businesses, with Davenport residents. I'm also very much worried or on alert, let's just say, about mortgage delinquencies, about credit card debt, about household debt. I will say to you that we have heard from some of our officials that have come before our committee. And my understanding is for mortgage delinquency rates, they still continue to be below historic averages. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be concerned about this topic. It is a very important topic. We need to continue to monitor it, and we need to continue to be there for Canadians if there's something we can do. I'll also say to you that mortgage delinquencies do not equate to arrears, and the mortgage arrears are at the lowest levels in decades at this moment. And in terms of bankruptcies, I know that is trending upwards, and we do have to look at that. My question is going to be whether it is different than what we typically see in terms of before the pandemic. And in terms of household debt, that has been a red flag that has been raised for a very long period of time in Canada. We have definitely a household debt issue here, and that's not just a result of the pandemic. So I think with that, I will turn the floor and baton over to whoever wants to speak to next. So I think the bottom line for me is this is an important topic. I think we need to find a way to address it, perhaps in one of the studies that we are actually underway right now. But I do believe that, and I'm also open, by the way, to Monsieur Samary's suggestion about some extra meetings. The work that we do is very important. And so I don't mind some extra time and extra meetings. As long as we don't go off course, we have the fall economic statement and a number of other things that we need to continue to keep on track. And I don't think that we want to go off track on all those. Thank you so much.
You, MP Zarowitz. I do have MP Blakey, and then after MP Blakey, MP Helen is up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm just hoping that we're going to get to see the motion in writing before the vote. I know there were a number of witnesses that were mentioned. I didn't have the opportunity to write them all down when we first heard it. So if we could
Jack, dear, just but MP Blakey, it was distributed. So did you receive it electronically? Can you just check?
Was that today, Mr. Chair?
It was, yes, right after, I believe, after MP Helen introduced it.
No, I don't have it, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Would we be able to get
that? So if the clerk could send that on, that'd be very helpful.
Yeah, he will send that off to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, MP Blakey, did you want to continue? Yeah.
I may have more to say after I see the motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so
you'll
receive
I'd like to take a look.
Okay, yeah. Definitely. So you should have just received it. Okay, and now we'll go to MP Helen as yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to address some of the comments that were made. It is clearly written in here that we want to have this study or these witnesses' testimony as a part of the impact of inflation and interest rates, the study that we have going on, because none of these people, I don't believe, have testified or been witnesses under that study just yet. And to address the comments about what academics are saying, I think it's time to stop listening to the academics and start listening to Canadians. I think that You can talk to any Canadian today, and they're feeling more pain than they've ever felt before. And we all know that 40% of the pandemic spending had nothing to do with COVID at all. And we know that this government tried to reward some of their friends, their liberal connected insiders, consultants, the We Charity scandal happened, all in between the pandemic. And all of these things, this government continues not to fight to have inflation come down, but fighting what the governor of the Bank of Canada is trying to do by increasing interest rates and lowering inflation. This is something that the governor himself said, that this government's fiscal policy is working in direct opposite direction of what he's trying to do by getting inflation down. And the Liberals seem like they think that Canadians have never had it so good before. 2 million Canadians in a food bank in a single month, it's not a good sign for this country. And I would argue that there's more and more people turning and leaving Canada. More than 400,000 people left this country because of the cost of living. That was the number one issue why most newcomers are thinking about leaving, is because of the cost of living. And given that all of this is happening, this government still wants to hike the carbon tax 23%. They still want to do that. And common sense Conservatives will continue to tell this government to axe a tax and spike the hike that they want to raise the cost of gas, groceries, and home heating. And once again, 70% of Canadians know that it's not working. That's why they reject this carbon tax scam. Canadians don't get more back in these phony rebates than what they have to pay into it. We know that. Emissions have not come down. This is more pain, and there's no environmental gain in it. And once again, a Liberal premier, we know 70% of premiers are against this carbon tax, and even a Liberal premier has spoken up and said, spike the hike on April the 1st. So given all of that, this is all contributing to the pain, these interest rates that are staying higher for longer because the government continues to spend, and we already know that they're probably going to miss their deficit targets again, according to Desjardins, which means more debt, inflation will stay higher, interest rates will stay higher, and more Canadians will be at risk of not just being delinquent on their credit card payments and their mortgages, but Canadians could start losing their homes because Canadians are most at risk in the G7 for mortgage default crisis. So I think this is a very important study that this is all new information that I think needs to be included in the study of inflation and interest rates. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, MP Helen. I do have MP Baker up next.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Given that we just received the motion in writing, I think at least Daniel only received it a couple minutes ago, but even the rest of us only received it at the beginning of the meeting. I'm just wondering if we could have a couple minutes suspension so we can confer with our colleagues.
We'll suspend for a few minutes. screen, but I do see MP Zerowitz's hand up. MP Zerowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank everyone for that great pause. I had the chance to look over the notice of motion from Mr. Hallam. Mr. Hallam, thank you for passing this along. Want to see whether there was, I want to propose a tiny amendment. It is to take away the words for no fewer than 2 hours. That's after that, and the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance to appear separately for no fewer than 2 hours. Want to take the words out for no fewer than 2 hours. The Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance typically comes for 1 hour, which is the norm. I don't feel it's necessary for us to say for no fewer than 2 hours. And I wonder whether there is openness to us removing that from this notice of motion.
Thank you. So this is a amendment to the motion. Anybody to speak to this?
Mr. Chair, we should take silence as agreement.
Okay. So would anybody like to speak to this? So can you just repeat what you had proposed there, MP Zerowitz?
I'd be happy to, Mr. Chair. So basically, it would be in the 5th line. Just the words for no fewer than 2 hours is deleted. And so everything else remains the same. So the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, in addition to all other witnesses that's listed here, are invited to appear. The Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance to appear separately. It's just we take away the requirement of no, or the words no fewer than 2 hours. The norm, Mr. Chair, as you know, it is 1 hour. And so that is what typically is the expectation of Minister of Finance when he or she comes before the committee.
I was just going to, yes. MP Zerowitz, we're just going to ask you to connect unplug and plug back in for your microphone. It was not plugged in, actually. We were having trouble with our interpreters. Were having trouble hearing you. Okay.
My sincere apologies.
Okay.
I do naughty. When we go into breaks, I do sort of take it out, and I did forget.
Okay.
Monsieur le Greffier, you
So I'm going to ask you just to repeat one more time what you had to say, so that we do capture that with the interpreters. And I'm not sure if MP Sainte-Marie was able to capture that en français. Oh, he got it. He got it. Okay.
No problem. And apologies to the interpreters and to Monsieur Sainte-Marie. I'm very sorry I forgot to plug in. Anyway, so my suggested amendment is just to take out the words for no fewer than 2 hours, which is in the 5th line. And the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance typically comes for an hour. And I think that is the norm. And I don't think that it's necessarily for us to say anything else. So I don't think it's needed for no fewer than 2 hours. So that is what I'm proposing as an amendment. And I want to see whether that might be a friendly amendment, or if everybody could agree to that amendment.
So I do have MP Hallen would like to speak to this. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just ask for a recorded vote on this amendment, please.
Okay. So it'll be, I don't see anybody else. So we'll, MP Blakey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to say, I don't know, I not to be dismissive of my colleagues' concerns on either side in respect to the 2 hours, but I mean, we have been inviting the minister for 2 hours or 3 hours, and she does tend to show up for 1 hour. I'm not sure that there's a lot at stake either way in this, if I'm being honest. I think we have a straightforward motion. Folks can like it or not, but I'm not sure that farting around with it is really gonna make a big difference either way. So I would just encourage us to maybe try and get to a decision on the main piece so that we can conclude the meeting in a timely fashion instead of belaboring small differences that will have no practical consequence.
Okay, anybody else to speak to this? This is on the amendment still. No, so on the amendment, clerk?
Mr. Baker.
In favor.
Monsieur Scarpaleggia.
In favor.
Mr. Weiler.
In favor.
Ms. Derowitz.
En faveur.
Ms. Thompson. Ms. Thompson. Ms. Thompson, can you hear me?
Oh, sorry. No, I didn't hear you. In favor.
Mr. Chambers.
No, although those of us on Zoom cannot hear the room.
Okay.
C'est le micro de Francis qui n'est pas fermé.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Can people hear me now? Yes? Okay.
No, MP Chambers still is nodding no. He cannot hear you.
You can hear me, Mr. Chambers? Yes?
Okay,
Okay.
yes,
we're-
okay.
okay. Mr. Halan?
No.
Mr. Lawrence?
No.
Mr. Morantz?
No.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie?
Oui.
Mr. Blakey?
Nope.
Yeas pour 6, nays contre 5.
So it was yes, 6 you had?
Yeah.
Okay, so it passes. Okay, so the motion, should we go to the motion as, I've got Yvonne Baker, yeah. Okay, MP Baker?
I just have a brief comment, Chair, and then we can move on. I think on the motion itself, I think this is an issue that is really important to all of our constituents, and so it's something that's certainly worthy of study. And I'll note that and I want to pick up on ce que Gabriel Saint-Marie a dit pendant son intervention.
Mr. Sainte-Marie mentioned earlier something that was interesting. I understood that you were saying that this was an important topic, but you were also saying that there will be a budget study, an economic statement that we'll have to pay attention to, and that those are priorities. Of course, those are priorities in our committee work. So we're taking stock of that and also taking stock of the importance of this topic, and therefore I am ready to support the motion.
Merci.
Thank you very much, MP Baker.
Now we are going to the motion as amended. Clerk?
Mr. Baker.
In favor.
Mr. Scarpaleggia.
In favor.
Mr. Weiler.
In favor.
Madame Derowitz.
En faveur.
Ms. Thompson.
In favor.
Mr. Chambers.
Oui.
Mr. Halan.
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence.
Yes.
Mr. Morantz.
Yes.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie.
Pour.
Mr. Blakey.
In favor?
Yeas pour 11, nays contre 0. Okay.
Okay, it's unanimous. Passes, great. Okay, so yes, I've got MP Helen.
Chair, I just wanted to follow up on on the programming of the last committee that we had. I wanted to know, is the finance minister scheduled to come next week to the committee?
So I know it's on the programming motion. I don't have information to that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've got MP Blakey, I've got MP Chambers, and I've got MP Baker.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to say how nice it is to see Liberals and Conservatives working together. It almost smacks of coalition, I think, certainly by the threshold that's been applied to that term in this Parliament. So congratulations to the committee on dealing relatively expeditiously with the business of this meeting. And given that we have had the opportunity to do so, I'd move to adjourn.
Okay. It's non-debatable, so we've moved to adjourn. Are we good, members, to adjourn? Yep. Recorded vote. Recorded vote, okay.
Mr. Baker,
In favor.
Monsieur Scarpaligia,
In favor.
Mr. Weiler,
In favor.
Ms. Zerowitz,
En faveur.
Ms. Thompson,
In favor.
Mr. Chambers,
Abstain.
Mr. Halan,
No.
Mr. Lawrence,
I will abstain as well there.
Mr. Morantz,
I'm going to take a stand and vote no.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie,
Oui.
Mr. Blakey.
Yes.
Yes pour 7, nays contre 2, 2.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.